All right, I'm recording here.
Hopefully I don't have any barbecue stains on my sweatshirt.
I didn't say my name. Ready? And in 3, 2. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Team Morale Podcast, where we do our two favorite things. We drink alcohol and we talk about the NBA. I'm your host, Ethan, and joining me, as always, my co-host, the tall guy, Mitch.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
All right, so brand new pod. We're excited to be here. Let's tell you guys a little bit about what we're going to be doing here. And on this pod, we're going to be drinking some whiskey, some beer, just trying different alcohol, rating them, telling us what we think about them. Maybe you guys can try it and drink along with us. We'll put the name of what we're drinking in the description or in the name of the pod. And then we're going to be talking about the NBA, our takes, what we want, our hot takes, any predictions, talking through rumors, trades, draft, games, who we think is going to win, who's on the rise, who's on the fall. What do you think about that, Mitch?
I love it, man. I say we just dive on in right now.
All right, well, let's start off talking about what we're drinking tonight.
Yes. All right, so tonight we have TX blended whiskey. And TX whiskey comes from right here in our backyard, Fort Worth, Texas, made by the Firestone and Robertson Distilling Company. And it's really light in color. It's really light in flavor. It's very, very sugary. I get a lot of vanilla out of it.
I'm getting a lot of vanilla when I try it here.
Yeah, and so I usually like to do 1 to 2 ice cubes. I think that you get the most flavor out of it when you're doing that. But you don't do that.
I do. I need some more water in my whiskey. I don't have enough hair in my chest.
You like a little whiskey in your water.
But it's good. No, it's good.
I do like it. Yeah. So I do like it. I think it's really good for kind of first-time whiskey drinkers. If you want to get yourself into drinking whiskey, this is a lighter, like a much easier one to put down than a lot of those ones that say that they're really fancy but are just like really hard to drink. Yeah. This one is very easy to drink.
The ones where you take a sip and you go,
Yeah.
But the cool thing about these ones is actually the caps and the bottles are kind of custom. So the caps are made of like cowhide or like leather or something. And each one's different, and each one has its like own. So basically, you can keep the caps and collect them and then you can display them or do whatever you want with them.
That's really cool. Yeah, I actually saw that you had one with a horn frog on it.
So graduation gift from my dad was a bottle of TX whiskey with the horn frog logo on the top. We're both TCU alums, and so so it's kind of cool. I haven't opened it yet, but we're excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go into, we've talked about the whiskey, let's go into a little bit about us, let our audience know who we are, who they're talking to here. So take it and run with it, Mitch.
All right, what's up, everyone? I am Mitch, a.k.a. The Tall Guy. I hail from the great Northwest, born and raised in Portland, Oregon, die-hard Blazer fan. I am not at all going to be biased towards the Blazers in this podcast at all. But no, Damian Lillard is the best player in the NBA. You cannot convince me otherwise. But we went to school here at TCU, when we both majored in sports broadcasting, and that's kind of the industry that we're in now.
Yeah, so I'm Ethan. I'm from Southern California, another West Coast kid. Big Mavs fan ever since coming out here to the Fort and just kind of enjoying being out here. I love having Luka. Hallelujah. But yeah, so we both, like Mitch said, we both work in sports television. We both work behind the scenes, so we thought we'd have a little fun and just kind of talk sports, which is what we do every single day.
Yeah, and hopefully we can bring a bit of a different perspective as guys that actually work in the sports industry, but kind of still on the peripheral to where we can still be fans.
Absolutely. And we're very excited about it. We're very excited to be here with you guys, and let's just get right into it. Let's just get right into what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so our first topic of the first show of the Team Morale Podcast, we're going to stick NBA this time, NBA schedule, what's coming up, what do we think's going to do. There's a lot of question marks with the NBA right now.
Yes. So right now what they have planned is to start the season up on December 22nd. And as soon as that came out, pretty much every single player came out and said that they hate that idea. And
I just got out of a bubble. I wouldn't really like it either.
Yeah, seriously. Can you imagine the fatigue of like sitting in the bubble for, 3, 4, 5 months? That like the winners that like at least like the Lakers were there, and I don't see LeBron wanting to jump right back in to a new NBA season. So it was Chris Haynes, I think, that came out reported that a bunch or a significant faction of the players do not want to start in late December, but would rather have a mid to late January start, which is going to have a bunch of different factors that hit in. A is 40% of the revenue for the
40%.
NBA.
They came out saying 40% of the money that the NBA makes is from putting butts in seats and stuff like that. So fans actually in the stadium. So NBA wants to get fans back in the stadium because they're losing out on not necessarily half, but almost half of their revenue.
A bunch of money.
Yeah.
They've lost a bunch of money in this last year.
They definitely want to do that. But the other side of the faction, or the other thing about this, is the fact that the Olympics are this year, and the NBA and NBA players always make a big deal about the Olympics. So they want to get this season done by the Olympics so that the players that want to go, that feel safe going, all that, want to be there and can go.
Yes.
They definitely are, and that's in June, so they need to cap it off right around when it normally ends, early June, late May. So that means if they are starting in, even if they start in December or January, they're having less games, but if they start in January, it's a whole month of games that they're going to not be able to play.
Exactly. I think the one thing that the Players Union and the NBA really agree on right now is the Olympics. Is everyone wants to have the best players go and represent and kind of like get back to a sense of normalcy
a little bit, yeah,
in this next Olympics. But the issue is with the players that want to back the season up, are you going to do less games? Because right now they're planning on a 72-game schedule and already condensed that's going to have several 3 games in 4 nights, a couple of back-to-back-to-backs, and that's already going to be really strenuous on these guys.
I would agree. And normally they play 82 games in a season that goes from October till the regular season wraps up around April-ish.
Yes, mid-April is usually when your last games of the
you're
season
losing out on October, November, December. Even if they start now, they're losing out on almost 3 months of it, and they're only taking 10 games out of the season.
Yeah.
If they start in January, that's 4 months. It's almost half the season. But they're still trying to only miss 10 games. So that's a lot of time these guys are going to be playing.
Yeah, so I've heard things like they're going to cut the All-Star weekend and take that and so that's a whole week break that they usually get in the middle of the season that they're not going to have. And that they're probably going to have to go less games. They're probably going to have to go more games of 4 games in 3 nights and back-to-back-to-backs, which, I mean, if you're LeBron at 36 years old, I can't imagine how excited you are to have those kind of games back. But it's
going to be a lot of stars taking nights off. A lot of, a big topic this year was load management. But if they're going to try to squeeze all these games in, it's almost like a baseball schedule where you're just playing constantly. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to actually do load management. You can't play that often in the grueling NBA season and still be able to perform your best in the playoffs. It's not. I mean, if teams are already doing it about the regular season, if they're condensing it down, teams are going to have to start resting stars.
Yeah, load management is going to continue to be a bigger and bigger thing, especially this year. And so, LeBron is typically a guy that does not buy into load management. He I think he kind of knows his star value, and that when he shows up to a place he knows that people are showing up to watch LeBron James and the Lakers. And so if he takes a game off, he knows he's shortchanging the fans. So he's never bought into that. But this year is probably going to be a time when he finally starts having to do that and really buying into the load management thing and kind of giving into the Kawhi Leonard idea of things, because it's going to be a grueling year no matter what happens.
It is going to be weird. It's going to be interesting. I mean, you're going to see a lot of, I think, undisclosed injuries per se, where a guy not necessarily for rest, but we don't know why he's missing. He's just not there today, or he's on the bench,
This last year, they straight up just started saying, oh, yeah, he's resting. It's he's out because of resting tonight.
I will say, I am a Mavs fan, and there was a game, I think it was last year, that I was going to, and I was really excited. I had never seen Luka live, in a game where I wasn't working. Mm-hmm. I'd worked Luka games for, but I've never actually been in the stands for. Yeah. And I got there, and it was me and my producer roommate Jay, who's a Nuggets fan. We were there for a Mavs Nuggets game, and we found out that Luka was resting, and I think Jokic was out too. So it was well, that's upsetting.
Yeah.
But it's things like that where, as a fan, I hate, but as the basketball lover that I am, I'm well, I want to see these guys in the playoffs. I want to make sure that they're good, and if it's a condensed season, I'm all here for it if need be, because. Especially in a regular season, maybe not, but in this upcoming season, you kind of have to.
Yeah. With the 72 games that is supposed to start on December 22nd, it's already going to be brutal. If you start on, I think they said January 18th, they're trying to do an MLK Day weekend start for everyone.
That's what the players want.
That's what the players want, and that's supposedly a big portion of the players are fighting for that. I think it was even Danny Green showed up on one of those Ringer podcasts earlier this week, and he was talking about how he is pretty positive that LeBron would not show up to games in late December. And so if you're the NBA, is it worth just rolling with the plan that you've already laid out and risking players not coming back? Or is it worth like giving into the players, because that's 9 times out of 10, that's how the NBA is operated, is that they're just kind of like, we're going to do what we think the players think is best because they know that the players run this league.
Absolutely. And I also think that, like, if you're going to do the January start right around there when the players want MLK Day, I don't think it's possible to do 72 games. I think that is too. You're going to have to cut games. You're going to have to.
Yeah. And we still don't know, like, what is COVID going to look like at that point?
That's a whole other side of the coin. Is like the NBA wants to put fans in stands, but are they going to do another bubble? Are they going to do like what the NHL did with a couple of bubbles? They can do like 4 or 5 different bubbles based on where the teams are. Like, or are they just going to do what the MLB did and just let everyone fly around? Like, there's a lot of question marks in that area too.
Yeah, I think right now their game plan is to go more of the baseball and football route. And that is to have a relatively normal schedule that's like really sectioned off of like long road trips and long home trips. And so it's like you're going to one region for like a long period of time. So you go a bunch of games in California, go up to Portland, like a couple games in Phoenix or Utah, and then go home and have 5 or 6 more games at home.
Yeah.
But like this COVID thing is like, you don't know if guys start getting it and like a whole team gets it and like are they going to cancel games kind of like football has? And if you start canceling games, what does that look like? And so there's a lot of question marks that are still up in the air right now.
It's going to be real interesting. I also think like a whole other flip side of the coin of this is like, if you're a player, right, and someone like gets on your team gets COVID, like, do you feel comfortable taking the floor? Do you like baseball? Like, you don't necessarily get within 6 feet of everyone in a game. Football is different, but the NFL is kind of just plowed through this anyways. But like, the NBA is like, you're playing so many games, it's hard to reschedule.
Yeah. It's easier when you only have 17 games.
Yeah.
Like, strict 17 games.
And you can cut and move games and jigsaw around it. But the NBA, like, you know, a whole other side of this too is NBA, you play every team in the league. Baseball don't do that. In the NFL, you don't do that either.
Yes.
So you're traveling a lot more. So that's a bunch of questions that the NBA is going to need to answer soon before we get into the really crux of when the season's going to start.
Yeah, because we're kind of just getting going here. So the NBA draft is going to happen on November 18th. So the draft is already happening very soon. Mm-hmm. Soon after that is going to be when free agency starts kicking in.
Normally it's a week. I've heard as much as 48 hours afterwards. Like,
really?
It could be real quick.
Ooh.
So
that would be fun.
Basketball fans, I mean, at least me, like, I love off season, people moving around, a lot of strategy, all that stuff going on. I know you're a big trade machine guy.
Love the off season.
Don't worry, people. Later pods, we'll definitely get into more trade machine, what's going on. I think later in this show too, we'll have a segment about some potential
all the
rumors.
Hypotheticals.
Yes, big hypothetical people.
Yes, all the hypotheticals. We're going to be getting into all that kind of stuff. And I think it's just fun because I love the off season. I think that that's when you build all these storylines, and that's what the NBA is so great at doing, is like creating superstars, creating narratives, and like all of that has been, the last several off seasons have been amazing. I remember waking up at like
explosive is a word I would use.
I remember waking up at like midnight getting the update that Paul George had forced his way to Los Angeles with Kawhi. I was like, oh my God, what is happening right now? And the NBA is just like a whirlwind in the off seasons right now. And so this is gonna be a shortened, condensed one that's still gonna be a ton of fun.
It's gonna be must see TV for sure. All right, so that wraps up kind of our first segment here. We're going to segue into some other things. And these are some rumors that we're going to talk about that have been bouncing around the NBA a little bit here and there. So let's just kind of dive into them, talk about them, and we'll see what we get.
All right, sounds good.
So the first one is a lot of speculation about what the Warriors are going to do with number 2. A lot of, people are predicting big game hunting, going to get another star. They think another Kevin Durant, Boogie Cousins situation is going to happen over there. So what do they do with pick number 2? What do you think they're doing? What should they do? Should they make the pick?
So they are definitely the most interesting storyline, and they're going to I think what they do is going to cascade, and it's going to be like an avalanche of stuff that happens in the draft, because anything they do is going to be on draft day. There's not going to be any moves before that. So November 18th, that's when we're really looking at. And right now, I do not think that they make this pick.
I would be shocked if they did.
I'd be shocked if they make the pick. they are in 100%. They're still in win now mode. They are still the Warriors. We may have forgotten about them because they're the worst team in the NBA this year.
Of course, the team that has been ruling everything for the longest time has the number 2 pick in this draft.
The thorn in LeBron's legacy, the Warriors. And they are going to come back with vengeance next year. I think that they are still lacking in a lot of areas. Like, I think they kind of knew they were tanking going into next year, so they didn't bring in a lot of the ring chasers, like vets, off the bench that they usually do. So they're playing a ton of rookies, a ton of like young guys. Like there's like some G League dudes. Marquise Chris, who bounced around the league for a long time, had a pretty decent season with them. So they have some pieces moving in that they'll probably still use, including Eric Paschall and including Marquise Chris. But I really don't think that they make this pick because I don't see a pick that you take in the top 5 that's not a long-term project.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of question marks around it. I mean, there's players there that could help, but there's not a difference maker.
Yes.
And right now in the Western Conference, it's an arm race to 3 because there's a bunch of duos right now, and which is why I love the NBA right now. But there's a bunch of duos, and it's that team who can get that third star that will really put them above everyone else, and then it's chasing them. And the Warriors, in my opinion, have the best tools to get it because they have the most trade assets. They have a big contract in Andrew Wiggins. They have something that, I mean, people love draft capital. This draft might be not as good as others, but it's still the number 2 pick. And they have a bunch of young assets that they can attach to it. So you got your big salary, you've got your big attraction of the number 2 pick, and you have some young assets like Eric Paschall
that you throw in there,
the Marquise Chris that you can
even
throw
Kai
in
Bowman.
there.
Kai Bowman is low-key one of the better perimeter defenders in the entire NBA this year.
Another great option, but those are all things that you can attach into a trade package to go get that big game hunting, big whatever that you want to mount on your wall to add to your other stars of Clay, Draymond, and Steph, obviously.
Yeah, and so the question is, what kind of caliber player can you get, and who are you trading with to get there? I think that the most realistic trade that I think is actually going to happen is probably for Aaron Gordon with the Magic. The Magic are looking for young pieces, so they'd be happy with the number 2 pick. They could definitely use a distributor and like a playmaker, and that's where LaMelo Ball comes in. And they would definitely still use an Eric Paschall, and they still use a Kai Bowman, and Andrew Wiggins would fit in really well there too. So I could see trades like that, but also their main goal is to go big game hunting and to go.
You're talking the Warriors.
The Warriors, and so like their goal right now is to go look at Ben Simmons.
Yeah,
test the market for Joel Embiid.
They have there's definitely rumors flying around of a Ben Simmons type trade. I even read a 3-team trade which included the Suns, and so the Warriors would send number 2 and Wiggins to Philadelphia for Ben Simmons, and then they would also send I think it was Paschall to the Suns for Kelly Oubre to add another wing to replace Wiggins.
Yeah.
And then I think it involved the Sixers giving a 2nd-round pick to somebody. But it was the big crux of the deal was the Warriors getting Kelly Oubre and Ben Simmons while giving up Paschall, Wiggins, and the number 2 pick.
I will say that sounds like a trade that a Warriors fan is trying to make because I think it'd be difficult to pry Ben Simmons away from the Sixers' hands, but also we have no idea what the Sixers are going to do. They are now run by Doc Rivers and Daryl Morey, and I have no idea what it is that they are looking to do. I have no idea what kind of style the two of them together fit. I know that Daryl Morey has had a lot of relationship with Doc Rivers and has tried to get him to actually be his coach several years before. And so I know there's a lot of respect there. And Doc Rivers has also been a GM himself. And so he is going to want to have a say in what is happening with the roster.
Yeah, I would agree. If I'm deciding here, and if it were up to me, which obviously it isn't, but I think I would pick Ben Simmons over Embiid. I think Embiid has higher trade value, and yes, I think he has a higher ceiling, but I also think he has a much lower floor where he's a guy who can't stay healthy. Yes, when he's healthy, he dominates, but he showed in the playoffs this year that he can't be the only, he needs help. Yeah. And that team had some help. They had some shooters, they had some defenders, and yes, they missed a creator, but when you're a big man and you're going against the Celtics who don't have a big man, go eat.
Yeah, exactly.
Go eat, and he couldn't.
He kind of refuses to sometimes.
Yeah,
he just gets very complacent out of nowhere.
If I'm them, I'm picking Ben Simmons, who can create. And yes, he can't shoot, and it's a meme, and it's hilarious. But he should be able to at least get in the paint and dominate and get in the paint and kick out the shooters. And if you build a team around his like just general like skill set, I think that team would be pretty successful.
Yes, I totally agree. I also, if I am the 76ers, I don't give up on the duo right now. I think that next season you're going to have the exact same trade value with both these guys. Like neither of them are losing all of the value, and like there's going to be a better draft. Barring like some like horrific injury, hopefully that doesn't happen. But both guys are kind of injury prone, so that could be an issue. But I think I run it back and see what Doc Rivers can do with the two of them. My main concern with them would be like trying to get rid of Al Horford's contract,
which is going to be tough.
And you're probably going to have to offload assets of your own.
You're going to have to attach something to it.
Probably Tybal. Probably your first round pick this year. Something along the lines of that to a team that's happy to take in cap space. Detroit Pistons, an Atlanta Hawks, or something like that. Someone that could use a vet and will take in the cap space for additional assets. A Charlotte Hornets. Yeah. And I think that would be my main focus if I'm the 76ers. Or trying to get rid of Tobias Harris. And seeing what kind of value you get from Tobias Harris. Because like whatever they're doing is not working. They need to fix something up to like change up the style. But I would hold on to Ben Simmons and Embiid this season.
Yeah, and their books are so bloated too, just because there's got so many big contracts at the top, and then they're trying to fill in the cracks. They tried to do what the Warriors did, which was have like 3 or 4 max guys and then fill in the pieces with minimum and rookie deals, but they just couldn't do it. Also, we're just gonna put this out there now. We're going to go over our 30-minute limit. We talked before this, ladies and gentlemen, that we were going to be a 30-minute podcast, but I'm enjoying myself. I'm about to pour myself my second glass of whiskey. So I think we just keep going here. So I'm going to pop this and keep going. The next team that we're going to talk about here that's another team that could go big game hunting is going to be the Brooklyn Nets.
Oh, yeah. So they have probably, I would argue, the best package this offseason. As far as young guys, so the Warriors have a great package, including number 2.
Yeah,
and I think it really depends on like what team you're trading with and what prospects they may value up at that number 2 value. So like if some teams fall in love with Anthony Edwards or LaMelo or James Wiseman or even Okongwu, I could see a team reaching for that. That being said, the best collection of assets that could be traded is Dinwiddie, Jared Allen, and Karis LeVert.
All 3 bona fide should be starting on a team.
Yes.
And if not, and you're lucky enough to have a team that they can come off your bench, you're getting a solid 6-man of the year candidate.
Yes, absolutely. And the Nets are, I think, like they're go big or go home right now. Like they are going for Paul George. They are going for Joel Embiid. They are going for Russell Westbrook. Someone big because it's enough contracts where they can bring in another max. And it's enough quality players to another team that might be looking for depth to where they can get like a real star.
Yeah, and it's interesting just because it's not a secret out there that the dynamic between Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in a locker room is going to be interesting. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost like this piece that they need to bring in is one, not going to ruffle any more feathers because feathers will be ruffled. They already have been ruffled in Brooklyn. But someone that could almost try to keep the peace, to keep that locker room together, because everyone knows that like the NBA is all about stars and keeping your stars happy. But in order to make a championship run, I feel like your team has to at least kind of like each other. Yes. Not a lot of teams out there just openly don't like some of their teammates that at least do well.
And it's hard for Kyrie and Kevin Durant to like all of their teammates because they rarely do. They rarely like anybody on their team. And I think that the Nets are going to be really fun to watch, especially because they pretty much have brought the entire 7-second Suns to be their coaching staff.
Yeah, D'Antoni on that system, which for those of you that don't know, D'Antoni, old coach of the Rockets, used to coach Steve Nash in Phoenix, is now an assistant for Steve Nash. So the player he coaches is now his head coach, and he's the assistant in Brooklyn.
And Amari Stoudemire.
And Amari Stoudemire is there too. So there's a lot of just 7-second Suns, a lot of just quick movement, quick shots. I think that they're going to be
jacking up threes. I think that they're going to break the record for the most 3-pointers taken in a season.
Well, isn't it broken like every year now?
Yes.
I feel like I feel like 3 teams would have broken last year's record this year.
That's a great point. Ever since the Warriors showed up, it really is like every single year has been a new record. And then the Rockets just took it to ridiculous.
I have a small feeling that James Harden had a little bit to do with it, but
But yeah, I think that I think that they're going to try to replicate this 7-second Suns thing. And DeAndre Jordan's a great role man that you can use with. Even if you don't trade Jared Allen, you just like run it back with him. He fits really well with that. The only guy I don't love the fit with is Karis LeVert because he loves to have the ball in his hands and he actually like works a lot better in the mid range and kind of creating.
And we saw that in the bubble where he kind of just like took over, especially I think it was their last game
against the Blazers.
He was scoring like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. We were like actually playing for our playoff lives, and they were just totally done. And yet, Karis LeVert like decided that was going to be the game he was just going to go off and like really give a shit about. Which really, I did not like that. Karis, you're on the list right now, man.
But yes, I think the package where Karis LeVert on a team could be like a solid number 2. He's not going to be your number 1, but on a team he could be a great secondary scorer. Dinwiddie could either be a great starting point guard or even better as a 6-man to spark the offense off the bench. Mm-hmm. And if you wanted to throw in Jared Allen, you're getting a good young center who can rebound, block shots, and play defense.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so that's where I think it's one of those things where someone could be enticed. And it has to be some sort of disgruntled star. I'm going to throw out even like a Victor Oladipo. Potentially could fit in that. And it's like you're getting, if you're the Pacers, if you could get Karis and Dinwiddie or Karis and Jared Allen and ship over Oladipo and then maybe a Doug McDermott or another
Dougie
McBuckets. Dude, McBuckets would fit so well on that team. Just jack it up. Him and Joe Harris just jacking it up from the corners. I think that there's a lot of potential options that they have out there for any type of disgruntled star that's going to be going out because everyone would love to get a Dinwiddie or a LeVert or an Allen.
They're definitely guys that would fit on a lot of teams. A lot of teams need what they bring, which is offense. They bring hustle. Mm-hmm. And neither of them are any locker room problems either. They're both appearing to be stand-up guys. Yeah. Dinwiddie's a little weird outsource or crowdsourcing his free agency, but
he wants to get paid in like all Bitcoin or something like that.
He also like put on like I think it was like a poll like, hey, where should I sign? And everyone was like, I don't know.
He's like, oh well, this was not what I was expecting. I thought you guys would have an opinion about this.
Okay, so we're going to switch gears here unless you have something more to go on. Okay, so we're going to switch gears from teams and go into more player-oriented things and try to figure out where they're going to go. So the one guy on my list right now is Gordon Hayward because I think that the Celtics are going to try to make a move. I think they try to move him for a big man. And I honestly have a potential idea for you, which involves the Blazers.
Does it?
I haven't told
Gordon
him.
Hayward to the
He
Blazers.
does not know this yet, so we'll see.
Hayward to the Blazers.
Sign and trade Hayward for Whiteside.
I would do that 1,000 times over and again. Whiteside is a good basketball player and also not a good basketball player at the same time. I don't know how it works. He blocks every single shot at the rim, but kind of just decides to not play sometimes and gets very pouty. So, as much as I love that Whiteside came and helped us out this year, goodbye. Especially if it's for Hayward. I do like that fit a lot, actually, for the Celtics because they could use... I mean, the one thing that they're really, really lacking is the rim protector.
And they don't need any sort of offense. They just need a defensive-minded big man that can go in there and guard the Joel Embiids, which they already did. But, there's other big men out there that they're going to run into.
Which Whiteside, to all the faults that he may have, which is, I think, majority personality things and, like, him just not being, like, motivated enough... Which, funny enough, he calls himself the horse because he thinks that he's a workhorse. I'm like, you won't even reach down to grab the ball if it's too low. You know what I mean? Like, I think that he would fit really well in a good culture like the Celtics. He did fit really well with the Blazers this year, and, like, he led the NBA in blocks for majority of the year. He was a top 3 rebounding center, and so he's got a lot of value to offer a team. I would be a little weary if I'm the Celtics to sign more than a 2-year deal at a contract that's going to be as high that's going to match Gordon Hayward. But if I'm the Blazers, I would love Gordon Hayward.
So what about, I guess you couldn't do a sign and trade with more than one guy, but I was going to say like something like Ariza oriented too to get that contract up a little bit more.
I'd be about that. I think that you could probably throw in Ariza. I know Collins has got a contract worth $5 million that I think that I think the Celtics would be really interested in a Zach Collins type of guy who can spread the floor kind of like they like to, and he can still kind of defend the rim. He's kind of a new era center. He's got a lot of stuff to still work out, and he's still very raw. But I think you know me. I've been very high on Zach Collins for a long time. I'm afraid to trade Zach for anybody.
Zach
I think he's
Collins out
gonna
of
pop.
Gonzaga. He was a lottery pick, correct?
Yep.
And
Yeah, we
so
traded up
he's
for him.
a guy who can shoot some threes. He can play some defense. He's very Draymond Green-esque.
Yes.
But a very
At his
poor
max.
man's version
At his
of a
max.
Draymond Green. Very poor man's version.
Yeah.
But yes, so Gordon Hayward, Celtics, I think are going to try to move him. I would be surprised if they ran it back with the squad they have just because of the glaring hole they have at center.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's their biggest tradable asset, given he's an expiring a lot.
Yes.
But
Coming into a big free agency class.
yes,
Big
so
free agency class.
teams want to have cap space, so having a 30-something million come off the books next year is something that a team would want. So the question becomes, what can they get for him?
So a couple of offers that I've seen that I really like, and it's sending Gordon Hayward home one way or another. One is to the Pacers because he went to Butler, and I think he grew up in Indiana. And you do Miles Turner for Gordon Hayward.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes.
That
So-
stretches the floor because he can shoot threes. That blocks shots because he blocks a lot of shots. It doesn't necessarily give him the one-on-one defense that the Celtics necessarily need to stop an Embiid, but it's definitely an intriguing
upgrade.
offer. It's definitely an upgrade over Cantor.
So Tice was the starter majority of the year, and Tice is a really smart player, but he's like 6'8". You know what I mean? Like you can't if they're just gonna start
Not a
posting
tall
up
guy.
Embiid all night. There's nothing he can really do.
Yeah.
He's a great smart player, but he's best used off the bench. Cantor, another guy who's a good player but terrible at defense. Miles Turner is a good defender. He can stretch the floor. He's not going to be as strong as an Embiid, but I think it kind of fits both ways because the Pacers are like a net negative when Sabonis and Turner share the floor.
And as of now, I would say Sabonis is the better player than Turner. He's more
your
polished. He's got a better around the basket finishing game. He can still stretch the floor. Probably better screen center. Not as adept at defending the rim, but I think overall everyone would pick Sabonis over Miles Turner.
Yeah, which funny enough, 2 years ago, no one would agree with that. Like Miles Turner was the guy 2 years ago, but especially after the All-Star season that Sabonis had this year, he's going to be the guy that they roll with. And I think Turner's going to be traded, and I do think that Hayward could be traded, and I think that'd be a really good fit for both of them.
Yeah, it would be interesting. It is kind of crazy that they got both Sabonis and Oladipo for Paul George.
Yeah.
And so it's safe to say that the Pacers definitely won the Paul George trade.
Which I don't know if you remember at the time, but everyone was saying how terrible of a trade that was for the Pacers.
Yeah.
And I remember that. So it's Kevin Pritchard that's the GM of the Pacers. And when he originally made that trade, it's like Oladipo, it was almost a bit of a journeyman at that point where he was with the Magic and he was with the Thunder.
And he was such a high pick. He was number 2 overall pick, I believe.
Yeah.
And he was supposed to be all that in a bag of chips, but he just never really panned out. And I couldn't figure out if it was a system thing. He was playing next to Russell Westbrook, which is difficult, as many people know.
Yeah, and I think that he kind of got with the Magic caught up that the fact that the Magic are just bound to be terrible all the time. And then with the Thunder, he got caught up in the Russell Westbrook tornado, where I think there's a lot of guys that benefit with being Russell Westbrook, and then if you're a guy that likes to have the ball in your hands, you are not going to benefit with Russell Westbrook.
Yeah.
So then he goes to, and then when they made that trade, Sabonis I think had just been drafted. I don't think he even played a game with the Thunder.
He might have
maybe
played
had
a little
one
bit.
season or
Yeah,
something
maybe,
like that.
yeah.
But and then it was a terrible trade for the Pacers at the time. It was like, wow, they did not get good value out of a Paul George who was just traded for like $1 million first-round picks to the Clippers.
Yeah.
But then it turns out and they win the trade.
Yeah.
Because both of them turn out to be all-stars.
And barring Oladipo's really unfortunate injury, he was on pace to be
Really good.
really good.
Really good, yeah.
One of the best players in the East. Had a little bit of Jimmy Butler in him, where he was a great perimeter defender as well as a good scorer. But
yeah, kind of a little Jimmy.
Yeah.
Little Jimmy, or like a discount Dwayne Wade.
Yeah, a little
type
bit.
of thing.
Yeah. All right.
And then the other trade I was going to throw out there was
please.
Gordon Hayward for Gobert.
I mean, you're gonna have to add something. If I'm the Jazz, I'm not just giving Gobert for Hayward. I'm not.
What if I tie in Marcus Smart? Hayward and Marcus Smart, and I say Joe Ingles and Gobert.
It's just tough because yes, the Jazz might have some locker room problems, but you're giving up the 2-time, 3-time defensive player of the year for a guy who's a shell of his former self. That's tough. It would really need they would really need to have an implosion of the teammate chemistry in on the Jazz.
I think they were pretty close to it at the end of the coronavirus, but I think they have gotten better.
Yeah,
since.
I would agree.
Yeah,
I would agree. But we were speaking about Oladipo, so I wanted to bring us back because he's another guy who could be on the move.
He's already said that he wants to
leaked
leave.
his way that he wants out. Didn't necessarily came out, kind of denied it, but also like that stuff just doesn't randomly come out of thin air sometimes.
Yes, I think that there's a lot to it. I think that he realizes that he is not going to be the guy there anymore. I think that it's Sabonis, I think it's Warren, and I think it's Brogdon. I think like that's like the Pacers' core group moving forward. And I think he knows that. And so I think that it could have been his camp that was starting to leak out like, hey, I want to be moved. I want to go somewhere else. And I don't think that his value is as high as the Pacers want it to be. And I don't think it's as high as Oladipo wants it to be.
Or thinks it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of weird. I kind of view him and Gordon Hayward in the same way to where like you've got your like big game hunting and then you've got your like middle tier guys that are like good, like third fiddle guys. Like you've got your number 1, your number 2. This is a good number 3. And I would agree that Oladipo and Hayward are both good number 3s.
Yeah.
And like
he's a number 2 on a playoff team and a number 3 on a championship team.
I would agree. And as a Mavs fan, who we have our number 1 and number 2, I'd be all about bringing in one of them as a number 3. We don't have the contracts or anything that would really interest them.
Though.
The fit's great, but honestly, who doesn't love a wing defender who can score?
Yeah,
the fit's great everywhere.
That's a good point. Because it's one of those things where like you don't know what he's gonna look like going forward. Like if he at all brings back the clock and turns into that all-star he was last year, that people kind of forget almost beat LeBron a couple years
ago.
Took him to
7 games, right?
Yeah. And if they had called the goaltending that actually was goaltending on LeBron, the Pacers may have won that series.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things where it's tough just because like even if he's hard to like value just because even if let's say he doesn't come back to his full self, if he can still make threes and play defense, that's such a valuable thing in the NBA.
Yeah. So what do you think is the best offer the Mavericks can offer?
The Mavericks?
Yeah. What is your absolute best offer?
I would say probably Tim Hardaway Jr., who's gonna assuming he opts in, and then maybe like a Seth Curry if that's interesting enough. I think
probably not.
I think that offer could be outdone. We have some picks we can throw in there maybe, but
I do like that the 33 pick.
The deal 31, but the deal would be
31,
centered around Tim Hardaway Jr. and then take your pick of Seth Curry, Maxi Kleba, Dwight Powell.
They are in a bit
right. We have a lot of role players, but I don't think that's enough for I think that deal will be outdone.
It very well could be outdone, but say it's not. Say that there's not a lot of value for him. I could see them going for depth. I think that not Dwight Powell, but Maxi Kleba would fit really well next to Sabonis because he's actually a really good rim protector and he can still stretch the floor. And then that allows Sabonis to do a lot of his playmaking from the inside. I think that Tim Hardaway Jr. is a good fit on that team on the 2. If you like are actually trying to replace Oladipo,
the fits work, but I stand by it. I think that deal could be outdone. I can see a team that's got like a late lottery pick.
Yeah,
throwing that in a contract out there to see what could stick.
Yeah, very fair.
I can see a dark horse team that I haven't heard a lot about is the Hawks.
Oh,
I think the Hawks would be very interesting. They have cap space, so they don't necessarily need to trade a ton of assets.
They can just take it.
But they have a high pick. They have some young guys that they could throw in there. So whatever their pick is, I think it's like, I don't know, 5 or 6.
Yeah. So say you do the top pick and Cam Reddish
or Herter or a combination, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think him and Oladipo and Trae Young next to each other could be pretty fun to watch.
That'd be really fun to watch.
All right, and I know that this is where we're going to get some hot takes, but LaMelo Ball is the last thing that we have on the docket for today. But LaMelo Ball, I know you're not high on him. I know you have some things you want to spit about him, and I know he hasn't been performing well in his draft interviews, so take the floor, sir.
Okay. LaMelo Ball is a punk. Straight up. He has been a punk because he's been on reality TV shows already. He thinks that he's the best of all the brothers already, and he's not played a single real minute of basketball. Yes, he went to the Australian League, and yes, it's like a grown man league where they're very tough and very physical, and I think that could benefit him. But I don't think that he's going to pan out that well. The only thing that will really work for him if it comes together is his jump shot. He takes a lot of deep shots. I don't know if you've seen his tape from the NBL, but he takes a lot of like those long like Dame, Steph, Trae Young, like deep style threes, and is a very low conversion percentage on it.
His shooting percentages and his shooting splits are not good.
Yes,
they're not
very
good.
bad.
He is a good creator. And his assist numbers were pretty good, and
he's like 6'7" or something like that.
His assist to turnover ratio is also good, so, and he has the ability to probably be a pretty decent defender given his size.
Yes, I think that he is a good basketball player. He has stuff that he can add to a team, and he has a very high ceiling. That being said, I also think he has a very low floor. I think that he is probably the biggest boomer bust candidate at like even more than Edwards and Wiseman, which is why those guys are the top threes, because they have the highest ceilings, but all of them have really low floors. But I think that he has the highest ceiling and the lowest floor. He could totally make me eat my words and go out there and just totally fit in today's like really fast run and gun style. Whoever drafts him hopefully gives him a lot of leash, because that's what he's going to need going forward. But I've heard a lot of stuff about how he has been doing really poorly in interviews, and like teams are just like, they don't like his maturity, they don't like his general attitude towards like the game, they don't think he has the kind of work ethic to turn into a star.
And
I think
his basketball IQ has been questioned a little bit as well.
Yeah, and I think like he's a great passer and he sees the floor well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that like you have a good basketball IQ. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you this: where do you think is a good place for him to be taken in the draft? Because you're not going to say he's not going to be in the lottery.
Yes, he will be in the lottery. I have heard that he could go as low as 10, and that's only if people are really just not buying into the guy LaMelo Ball, because his talent just shows for itself. Like he at the very least is going to be a good distributor, and a tall, athletic distributor that at least likes to shoot threes. You know, you're not going to get Ben Simmons who's afraid to shoot threes.
I was about to say, sometimes just shooting them is enough.
Yeah.
You make them at a decent enough clip to where they have to guard you out there so someone else can get in the paint.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's what you want with the number 2, 3, 1 even overall pick.
Exactly. And I think this draft is really interesting, where those top like 3, 4 picks are like really high ceiling, really low floor kind of guys, where, you know, they could totally flame out like Anthony Bennett did type of thing, but they also could really pop. But once you start getting to the middle of the draft and like later draft in the first round, is you have a bunch of guys who are going to be, I think, solid role players, like very like solid picks that you think that are going to like fit on your bench or like fit in like a small piece of your starting lineup, and they could play almost immediately. And I think that there's a bunch of guys like that. But with LaMelo, I have heard that his dad came out the other day and said that he really hopes he goes to New York. I think that would not be good for LaMelo.
Not be good, huh?
I think he needs to go somewhere where the spotlight is not going to be on him, type of thing.
So like Detroit.
Yes, Detroit. I think if Orlando picked him, I think that would be a good pick. I think that if Charlotte decided to not go with Wiseman, and if they want to move either Graham or probably Rozier, that LaMelo would fit really well next to them. I think he should go to a smaller market to where he's not going to have the spotlight on him, and he can make a bunch of mistakes without like the eye of the world,
without
Twitter
being
and Instagram.
Shaqtin' a fool.
Yes. Yeah, you don't want to be on Instagram a lot if you're LaMelo Ball, because if he is, it won't be for good things.
All right, everybody. But that kind of wraps up our first pod. We'll be back next time with a bunch of other things. We've got a bunch of things on the docket. We've got a mock draft coming up that we're going to be putting out here on the pod. We've got cool segments that Mitch came up with the other day that we're going to go through each team in the NBA, do our takes on them, what we think they should do this upcoming offseason, moves they should make, players they should draft, just overall contracts, all that stuff, because that's stuff we love. That's stuff that we like to talk about, so hopefully you guys like to hear it. Welcome to the first Team Morale podcast, brought to you by TX Whiskey this time. As you can see, we put a hefty little dent in that thing, I guess, for 45 minutes.
No, it's a good whiskey. I think it's a good whiskey, especially if you're starting out drinking whiskeys. It's not going to be too intense for you.
But yeah, good whiskey, good talk. Team Morale. Good job, everybody.
Good first
pod
podcast.
down.
Cheers, man.